Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm here at CES 2026. We're just about starting the shows. The press days have started. The CES exhibits open up tomorrow. And I wanted to replay for you the conversation we had with Brian Comiskey, who is CTA's Director of Research and Intelligence around what the future trends will be. Tim Albright and I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and here's what he had to say about what the show will be about this week. And you'll see our show next week, which has the wrap up and coverage of all the things that we think are hot. But for now, here's our conversation with Brian. But we're going to be talking CES 2026. I've got a couple of great guests with me. First of all, you all know Tim Albright. Tim, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. How are you, sir?
Thank you for joining me for this one, Tim. And we're introducing everybody to Brian Comiskey, who is with CES. Brian, tell us what your role is at CES, what you do there.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me on. But I'm Brian Comiskey. I'm the Senior Director of Innovation and Trends and Futurist at CTA. So my job is a bit dual-hatted. So I oversee and manage a partnership that we've done with NASDAQ for 15 years. But as it pertains to CES, my job is to figure out what are the emerging technologies and trends that are appearing on the show floor and how are they going to shape and impact society in the coming years.
Brian, does that mean that you're the person that's going to be giving the Tech Trends presentation on Sunday evening?
That is in fact correct. I will be giving the tech presentation on Sunday evening, as well as doing another take of it on Monday morning.
Those Sunday evening things that come just before the unveiled event that takes place at CES, this is all inside terms. So if you guys don't know it, forget it. I apologize. But those, they're getting packed lately. I mean, it's been standing room only the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really grown. I think a lot of media want to get a really good insight to what's happening at the show beforehand, and then get a taste of the show floor by going to CES Unveiled, which happens right after that presentation, so they can see a bit early on what is going to be on the show floor this year.
All right, so let's get into what we think we're going to see at the show this year. Obviously, we don't know everything, but we do know a few things that are going on, and I can even give some previews of some things that you guys don't even know about. But interestingly, I guess this is going to be the year of the AI washing. If last year wasn't, this year is certainly going to be. I assume that we're going to have, as I've said on some other webcasts before, AI toilet paper and AI toothpaste, and AI robots and AI everything. I mean, are we starting to see people take, scratch out metaverse and put in AI everywhere where it was, Brian?
I think it's more what I'd call an era of intelligent transformation is what's occurring right now, which really is, it does speak to the fact that AI capabilities are permeating across multiple sectors and different industries and really pushing them forward. So I think we're going to see AI, but I think it's going to be a lot more solutions in the enterprise space, a lot in the healthcare space. Automotive is certainly going to see a lot of AI. And then I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that robotics was going to play an important part for AI as well, really being an extension of it as physical AI.
Well, and Danto, you actually kind of stole my thunder because I had written down, the metaverse and what we saw 4 years ago now, when we walked on the show floor, everything was the metaverse. It was meta everything. 2 years ago was the first kind of blush with AI. We saw a number of folks that were out there. I ran into some folks down at the Eureka Park that had some really, really interesting applications. Fast forward 2 years, where you've got applications on every show floor across CES that will be very interesting. Some of it will be marketing. Some of it will be just because you can, that doesn't mean you should type situations. But we saw that with the metaverse, where it was a little bit overkill. You'll have to do your due diligence. That's what you and I are there for, right? Is to talk to people and see exactly what the application is and the, how real that tech is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I was going to say quickly to that point, I think a lot of it too is how did some of the metaverse technologies pivot into being more digital twin focused or industrial AI focused? So it's one of those, sometimes the branding or the marketing around it changes, but there's still a real application there that I think is quite important. The example I think of is what Siemens has done in the digital twin space. They called it industrial metaverse, but they've pivoted and called it industrial AI to really focus, I think, on what's going on behind the scenes, which is how are these algorithms really creating a way to optimize factory design, really push forward textile manufacturing as well as even build race cars. So sometimes it comes down to it's maybe initially it's marketed as one thing, but then a realization of this is the actual technology behind it that's quite important.
Yeah, one of the things that we see, and this is not just at CES, although that's the largest conference, but in the context of this conversation, but we see a huge noise floor at a lot of these exhibits and conferences that Tim, that you and I go to, and that includes CES, where everything sort of blends in. The really good standout pieces kind of get lost in the hum, the drone of everything else that's going on, that's pure marketing and trying to catch on with marketing. And it's a little hard sometimes to pick out the trends and things that are actually really going to happen. So we'll give you the buy on AI, Brian, because I have a feeling that we could spend the next few hours talking about it, and whether it's the nuclear power that's powering it, or systems that are actually using it. Let's pass that. But why don't we talk about some of the other things? First of all, give us the dates of CES again, and the logistics, because I know you've opened a new location, right, at the Fontainebleau as a Foundry this year. So can you give us like the 30-second version of what we can expect at the show this year from a logistics standpoint?
Yeah, of course. So the show is going to be from January 6th through 9th in Las Vegas, between the Las Vegas Convention Center, the Venetian Expo, as well as C-Space Programming, which C-Space is our area for content and marketing. That will be over at the Aria as well as the Cosmo. We also have our media days that will be January 4th through 5th, so the Sunday and Monday of that time. And then you did mention we'll have a new portion of the show, which will be called CS Foundry, which takes place on days 2 and 3 of the show, so 7th and 8th. And that's going to be focused primarily on AI as well as quantum technologies, really showcasing what the future looks like in that regard. It will be full of programming in terms of speaking and demos, as well as some small exhibits to really get hands-on software demonstrations of what's going on in the AI and quantum space. And that will be a nice sort of show within a show because, to your point, CES is really grown. It's over 2 million net square feet across the show floors of Vegas. So you really get into this play of, you have a few thousand exhibitors, you have well over 100,000 attendees. How do you navigate that show floor? Well, a lot of that will be some of our enhanced app features that we're going to have to play. And then preparing for the show using the website cs.tech will really help that really navigate your show as well.
Yeah, one of the saddest times I ever had was probably about 20 years ago at CES, when I realized I couldn't see the show anymore. It's impossible for an individual to attend the show. You either have to go in a group, or you have to pick and choose the various pieces and divide and conquer, because it's just too big to see
Yeah.
everything that's going on. And Tim, I know you and I spoke about it a number of times, is you want to try and make sure that you're in one place for a day. You don't want to spend half the time that you're in Vegas, on transportation getting between venues.
Well, and part of that is there's two things there. Part of that is the planning ahead, and the other part are the media days that Brian was talking about. My first one was again 6 years ago, and I was very impressed with the ability to get more information out of those media days than I expected. And here's the reason why, because I've been to press conferences before, right? Where you go, somebody gets on there and they, hey, this is my newfangled whatever. Um, but those media days were really helpful for us to be able to kind of filter through and go, okay, this is what's important to me and to our audience, right? So this is where I need to go for the next 3 or 4 days. I really appreciate those. Everything under the sun from the Saturday and the Sunday, the 2 days before. But also kind of how CES is cordoned off into areas, right? There's a healthcare area, a healthcare tech area, right? There's
Enormous.
yeah, ginormous. There's an entire, let's say, automotive or driving or vehicle area. So it's really cool. And my favorite place, honestly, is the bottom, the first floor of the Venetian. Eureka Park is still one of my favorite places in the world because you are going to find people who had an idea and ran with it. And that to me, just that generic story is fascinating, but really kind of being able to spend some time with those folks is something that I make a point of spending at least a few hours, kind of hearing and figuring out those stories.
Brian, tell me, we mentioned AI, and
Mhm.
we've touched on healthcare, at least in this conversation, and saying how
Yeah.
big it is and how important it's become to the show. What are the other top three, four, five subject matter areas that we think are going to be really hot this year?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think it's important to contextualize AI or health, I should say, into a larger trend, which is longevity, which speaks to just
Hmm.
longer, healthier, better living. And that's really a combination of a few other trends that are occurring. One is the smart home getting more advanced, getting more standardized across the board, and having a lot more health features built in. When we think about, we've done studies at CTA that showcase that devices like smart smoke detectors and smart doorbells are sometimes considered critical healthcare devices, especially for an aging population. At the Venetian Expo this year is where you'll see a lot of smart home co-located with digital health technologies. So that's an important story. And then, of course, in that category, you also get food tech playing a role in there because nutrition is important and sleep technologies is a great role. So that's really the story that was going on in the Venetian in a lot of ways is that longevity story in West Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center. That's where our mobility story is going to be taking place. And it's really the entire ecosystem, not just cars itself, but the connected platforms that are occurring on board that allow for better self-driving, better connected features and infotainment, as well as the electrification story, which does continue as a global trend where you're starting to see vehicles. It was just announced today, some car companies are starting to allow vehicles to charge the home
Mm.
themselves and really go the other way. So that's the mobility story. We'll also in North Hall have a few collection of really good trends. One being we're gonna, CES is encompassing in of many trends, including even the enterprise now. So we'll see enterprise AI technologies as well as robotics play an important role. I think robotics is going to be one of the biggest trends in general on the show floor this year, seeing humanoids really showcase how advanced motion and language is improving on robotic capabilities. We'll also see sustainability play an important role in North Hall as well, with energy and power companies showing up. You mentioned nuclear power earlier, David. We'll actually have a company, Korea Hydro Nuclear, that is a utility company out of Korea that does focus on nuclear power. So it's playing an important role in the conversation as we think about not just the balancing needs of AI, but also just moving to the energy future itself. How do we get to zero carbon in some ways? And that will play an important role on the show. And then Central Hall is just as important as ever with a lot of the large AV companies showcasing the latest in video and audio technologies as well.
Now, I recall Samsung last year went literally wall to wall. First time they ever did that. You couldn't go from the front of the central hall to the back of the central hall without passing through the Samsung booth, which was really interesting. And I'll give everybody a little bit of a hint of the folks, my good friends at the IEEE are going to be showing off make your own karaoke things in their booth in the back, right near Sony. So that's definitely
Hmm.
one of the stops that I want to go by. And might be some other special announcements from those guys as well. So that's going to be really exciting. Brian, is the convention center going to be completely open? Are we going to have all the halls open again for the first time in a few years?
Excited to say that yes, the construction should be complete. So we'll have all of the halls from West Hall, North Hall, Central, and we'll have South Hall online as well. So you'll be able to walk the entirety of the show floor. And what's really exciting too is the Hyperloop is getting expanded as well. So it will actually stop at the Wynn now as well. So
Hmm.
that Tesla Hyperloop will have more stops that really connect the greater Vegas footprint to the convention center itself.
Very cool. One of the things I have a question for you, though, Brian, is one of the things that you were talking about here is not just the enterprise AI, but the power consumption and the power technology that we're seeing. One of the things for that is certainly sustainability and the carbon footprint. The other side, though, is the consumption of power for AI, right? So it is this interesting kind of this loop. What are you seeing as far as what's coming down the pipeline in January and beyond to meet the needs for these AI tools?
Yeah, well, I think it's very clear that in all of the above energy strategy in general is starting to come back onto the table in a lot of ways to really meet the power demand. In particular, I think a lot of that is the rising popularity of nuclear again. Last year in Eureka Park, we had a smaller startup that was showcasing nuclear, and there's possibility that Eureka Park will have that again. But as I mentioned, on the show floor in North Hall, we'll actually have a larger exhibit featuring a nuclear power provider. Because why is nuclear important? Well, it really speaks to the energy density that's able to meet the demands of AI overall. So that I think speaks to that we're starting to see just a shift in recognizing that, renewables are starting to play a larger role in the base grid in terms of energy workloads. Battery storage is getting better, so solar and wind are certainly playing an important role as ever. And companies like Jackery that showcase solar and wind solutions that for individual use are showing that there's a wide variety of different pathways to go renewables. But that presence of nuclear, I think, showcase how seriously overall this idea of modernizing the grid is becoming in terms of a major trend within the energy sector. I think there's a recognition that not just domestically here in the States, but also globally, there is a need to refresh the grid that is making it not only more energy dense, but making it resilient, making it flexible, especially in case of outages. And so I won't be surprised too if we don't, I would be surprised if we don't see solutions as well that showcase how AI is playing a role doing predictive outage prevention for some of these grids. So ironically, it's not just AI meeting or needing to have energy meet its demand, but AI playing a role in helping get that under control.
And there is a term I forget. I don't know if you guys know it for the new type of nuclear drop-in power, some type of modular nuclear, and I don't remember what it is. Does that ring a bell for you, Brian?
I was going to say, I think of small modular reactors, SMRs is what comes into play. I don't know if there's another term that you're thinking of in general, but SMRs themselves are starting to get a lot of play in terms of a lot more approvals, a lot more investment in the space, and a lot more interest. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that fusion is also gaining traction and popularity. We've had successful ignition, which is a key milestone in terms of making nuclear fusion possible occur in the
Just a
last few
couple of days
years.
ago, I saw the article.
Yeah, it's incredible. And we've seen a workforce increase in the private sector for fusion by 200% over the last 2 years. So I think that speaks a lot that that's just growing in terms of this is something that's on the table. But fusion, ironically, needs a lot of computing and a lot of technical computing processes to ensure that it happens. And a lot of that's going to come through a combination of AI and quantum computing as well to allow that to make it feasible.
All right, so let me ask you a difficult question, and I don't think it's unfair because it's something that's on all of our minds in the current geopolitical environments that we're in right now. You know, the majority of the South Upper Hall, the last time I were there, were all manufacturers from China. And between, tariffs and difficult negotiations going on around the world, and however you believe politics is going at any given moment, are we going to see as many exhibitors there and as many manufacturers there, or will there be less people coming to the show?
I think CES showcases that innovation is global and transcends borders. And so I know, tracking very closely what's going on in terms of the visa situation, what's going on in terms of travel, and, people are excited to come to the show. We expect to see exhibitors from all over the world. We get about 160 countries worth of exhibitors and attendees. So looking at that, we expect fully to see exhibitors from Korea, especially. Korea is actually our largest in terms of outside the United States. We see the most exhibitors and attendees coming from Korea, so we expect good attendance from them. We expect good attendance out of Europe. And then when it comes to China, we will have one of our keynotes is YY, the chairman and CEO of Lenovo, who will be doing a keynote at Sphere. So you're seeing across the board that we'll still have exhibitors in South Hall. We'll have those manufacturers still showing up. We'll even have exhibitors that are not just from China, but we'll see Philippines and India on display, showcasing the widening of the global footprint from that manufacturing side. So I think we're excited to see innovation really come from across the entire world. And that's my background, and it is in international relations. And I think that is what one of the biggest appeals of the show is for me personally, is seeing all of that innovation coming from truly anywhere. It's kind of the other side of the coin to what Tim was saying when he said that Eureka Park is anyone with an idea can come and build and scale. Well, anyone can come from anywhere at CES and really showcase what they're doing and build it at scale.
Yeah, and I think that the expanding global footprint is incredibly important, not just for CES, but for the technology sector in general, being able to expand it and produce it wherever in the world.
So Brian, let's put you on the spot for your personal opinion. If you were coming from the corner of the world that Tim and I are, if you're speaking to, an AV or IT integrator that works in an enterprise that has never really thought of CES as their show, they've thought of Infocom, they've thought of ISE in Barcelona now. What would be the top 2 or 3 things you would suggest that they make sure that they see when they drop in at the show?
Well, I definitely would suggest that they go to Eureka Park. I think that that is a showcase of just innovation across the board, and they'd be surprised by some of the ideas that they see there that were novel and new. I think that would be the first area that I would send them to, because I think it gets you a good taste of who is hungry to really showcase and scale their idea. And I think it gets to the spirit and positivity of the show. I think that's first and foremost where I'd send anybody, no matter what their background is. And then I think the next area I'd send them to would be Central Hall to see some of the large AV companies and showcasing what their latest advancements are. So what's TCL doing? What's LG doing? Maybe what's even to think about what's going on in some other sectors that are adjacent. What's Panasonic doing across the board? And so I think that those would be the 2 areas that I'd point them to immediately to really get a feel of what the show would look like.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially again, like I said, Eureka is my favorite place, but that Central Hall, and you go in there, and all the way down at the end you got Sony. So been there for years.
So I guess I really should ask you about AR, VR, spatial computing, Brian. It's one of the things that I tend to argue with some of the other analysts about. I'm always of the opinion that if a lockdown pandemic, we were all forced at home, couldn't get people using it, it'll never be a mass market product. It'll only be industrial. But I know there are people that would vehemently disagree with me and have said so. What's your thinking about what we'll see in terms of that whole space this year?
I think we'll definitely see a strong presence from smart glasses as well as spatial computing, really as a growth area. Particularly, I think smart glasses are starting to get their growth and showcasing that they have a form factor and a design that actually has the ability to, if there's any possible device that could go up against the smartphone in terms of lightweight, has a good screen and computing technology, it's the smart glasses. And that will diffuse into overall, I think, mixed reality glasses as well as some AR glasses in terms of their capabilities. So I think it's certainly a trend to watch at the show. It's one that has surprised me in terms of its growth over the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow more at CES 2026.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Luxottica Nuance didn't take off any faster than it did. I mean, I know it needed approvals, but the whole idea that I could wear a pair of glasses and have it improve the hearing that all us old guys start to have problems with, I thought that that was a natural winner, but then I'm really not seeing it in any retail location. So, you never know what's going to take off and what isn't.
Yeah, and I think sometimes to your point, the regulatory approvals sometimes depend on what that adoption looks like. And I think it's just the idea of the more diffusion of new models across the board, so more options for consumers to look at. I'm a big fan of those myself. I got to experiment and test with them at the show, and I can tell you on the show floor, that was one of the best inventions to have. I could really understand what people were saying. So I think sometimes with these trends that they take maybe a little bit longer than we expect, but doesn't mean that the innovation and the interest isn't there.
So, Tim, thank you very much for joining us today. If anybody wants to find out more information about what you do or where you are, how would you suggest they go about doing that?
Simplest, easiest way is to go by the website avnation.tv. That is avnation.tv.
I could have always used you saying an older version of that, although you have a new AVNation logo, so I guess
I do.
Brian, if somebody wants to find out more about the CTA and what they do, or reach out to you or find out about CES, where do you suggest they go first?
I suggest that they go to cta.tech to learn more about the Consumer Technology Association. And if they want to learn more about CES, they can go to ces.tech and reach out there, and they can get in touch with me that way.
That's it for this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, off to the CES exhibits. We'll see you next week with our wrap up from the show. Thanks very much.